Hey everyone, I'm TCS23 and welcome back to CrossOUT Basics. This video is my guide to radars in 2021. We will discuss their design and purpose, and I will also explain why every build you have in CrossOUT should be using one or more of these parts. So let's get into it. If you haven't noticed by now, CrossOUT is a team sport. Oftentimes the team that supports each other the best is the team that will come off victorious. One of the best ways to assist your teammates in battle is by equipping one of the various radars in the game. Before we review these parts in more detail though, I wanted to point out an essential tool that every CrossOUT player should be making good use of, and that is the minimap. Now the default size is set to small, but I would highly recommend adjusting this to large. If you're not sure how to change these settings, you can check out my 21 tips and tricks video for more details. The next feature of the minimap worth mentioning is the white lines you see here, which represent your field of view and the direction your camera is facing. And lastly, the white circle within your minimap indicates your current range of radar. Without any radar equipped, every vehicle has a base detection range of 60 meters, or about 65 yards, which is not great, but it's better than nothing. As of this recording, there are currently 8 parts that fall into the category of radars, and all of them have their pros and cons. It's also important to understand the two basic aspects of radar, which are detection and transmission. Detection is the range at which an enemy is spotted and displayed on your minimap, while transmission is the distance you can be from your teammates and still be able to share your intel with them. Some radars will only detect enemies that are in plain sight, while others can do much more than that. Let's start by looking at the smallest item on the list, the radio. This is a common part that can be crafted from the engineer's faction, and its only function is to extend transmission to 450 meters. Without any additional radar equipped, your base vehicle detection of 60 meters really limits the amount of information that gets shared with your teammates. So for a radio to be truly effective, you should also be equipping an additional radar that provides you with more detection range. On a positive note, the radio doesn't take up any energy points, and it has a small profile, so it can be placed anywhere on your build and it will still function properly. The next radar on the list is the RD1 Ruby. This is also a common part that can be crafted from the engineer's faction. Its sole function is to extend your detection range from the base 60 meters to 300 meters. One thing to keep in mind about this radar though is that it strictly runs off line of sight detection. This means that if anything obstructs your pathway to your opponent, they will no longer appear on your radar. Most of the radars in this guide use line of sight detection, so this is something you'll have to consider when choosing these parts. The good news is that this radar and the two that follow do not consume energy points, which allows you to spend that energy on something else. This radar is naturally one of the first that you will be using in conjunction with the radio. On a side note, you may notice that there will be certain items in the game that say, "does not stop the blast wave." This is referring to explosion damage, and there was a period of time in the game when parts such as these were able to be used as armor, but that's no longer the case. Okay, next up on the list is the RD1 Listener. This is a rare part that can be crafted from the Scavengers faction, and it is essentially an upgraded version of the Ruby. It has a line of sight detection range of up to 450 meters, and pairing this with the radio will ensure your teammates will be able to assist you even if they are further away. This radar is a bit larger than the Ruby, but for the most part, it's easy to place. Next, we have the RD2 King, which is an epic part that can be crafted from the Scavengers faction, and it boasts the furthest line of sight detection range of 600 meters. This radar is often used with long-range weapons, such as Pyres or the AC-50 Storm. On the plus side, this radar doesn't consume energy, but it does not transmit on its own. So this too will need a radio in order to benefit your team. Another point to keep in mind is that this radar takes up a considerable amount of space, so you'll want to make sure to leave extra room for its rotating parts. The next radar on the list is the Oculus 6. This is a special part that can be crafted from the Scavengers faction, and it requires 1 energy to run. It has a line of sight detection range of 150 meters, and it can also transmit the same distance to your team. A unique function of this radar is its ability to detect cloaked or hidden enemies up to 150 meters away from you, and it can detect mines at 24 meters out. The key to using this part effectively is to place it on a horizontal axis, which gives it a 360-degree rotation and allows it to point in the direction of the cloaked enemy. In addition to this, the Oculus will give audio and visual cues, including a blinking light and a shaded circle on the minimap to make you aware of the enemy's location. Since this radar only has a transmission range of 150 meters, adding a radio will boost its effective range and may be just what you need to get that support from your teammates. Next up, we have the Verifier. This is an epic part that can only be purchased on the market and requires 1 energy. It has a line of sight detection range of 200 meters with an equal distance of transmission. It can detect cloaked opponents at 200 meters away, but this radar takes it a step further. Once any hidden enemies are within range, the Verifier can then be activated, which launches an invisible drone, and after 3 seconds, it will decloak those vehicles, revealing their location. In order for this perk to be activated properly though, the top area of the Verifier cannot be obstructed, so this radar should not be placed underneath your vehicle. Lastly, it has the ability to detect mines up to 30 meters, and this radar should also be paired with the radio to maximize its effectiveness. The last 2 items on our list are what I consider to be the best radars in the game. First, let's take a look at the Maxwell. This is a special part that can be crafted from the Nomads faction, and it costs 1 energy to use. It has a line of sight detection range of 300 meters and an equal transmission range. It also can detect mines up to 16 meters. At this point, it really doesn't sound all that special, but here's where it gets good. It has the ability to detect enemies behind cover up to 250 meters. This means you no longer have to worry if you temporarily lose line of sight with your opponent, as they will continue to be detected on your minimap as long as they are not cloaked. This information is extremely valuable to you and your teammates, and it can help shape your entire team's strategy going forward. Some might contend that the Oculus and the Verifier have a better perk of detecting cloaked enemies, but the downside to those radars is that they don't transmit hidden enemy locations to your team. Additionally, cloaking modules themselves have a relatively short activation time, so you likely won't be benefiting from these perks as much as knowing where enemies are taking cover. The Maxwell also has a low profile, and since it is a special part, it doesn't take a lot of resources to craft. Even as good as this radar is though, it still could use a radio to get that extra 150 meters of transmission range to your teammates. And now we have come to the final radar on our list, the Doppler. This is an epic part that can be crafted from the Nomads faction, and it requires 1 energy to run. This is the only radar on the list that does not need a radio, since it has line of sight detection and transmission range of 450 meters. It also can detect mines up to 20 meters, but the best part is its ability to detect enemies behind cover up to 400 meters away. At that distance, you really have ample time to determine where you should be focusing your attack. It also has a relatively low profile and can be placed anywhere on your build and still be effective. This is by far my most used radar, and it is an essential part of nearly all my builds. Well, that will wrap up my guide to radars in 2021. I really hope you took away something valuable from this video. If so, please leave a like. And before I go, I wanted to update my subscribers regarding some exciting new changes. If you happen to check out my profile page, you'll notice that I finally got some new logo art. It was made by my good friend Ben, and he specializes in illustrations and paintings. If you're ever interested in having someone draw up some custom artwork for you, I'll leave a link to his Instagram in the description below. Additionally, since my last video, I hit 2 major milestones. First, I was finally approved for a CROSSOUT promotional account. I now go by the username TCS23 CROSSOUT Basics, so feel free to add me if you're interested. And lastly, my channel recently passed 1,000 subscribers. I can't believe I actually made it to this point, but I really want to thank everyone for their support, and to show my appreciation, I want to do a giveaway in my next video, so stay tuned for more details. Other than that, I'll see you here next time on CROSSOUT Basics.